Hello everybody, welcome to episode 213 of Show For You, where today we'll be going over the 2025 movie entitled Marty Supreme. Now, I know probably every single one of you all have heard of this movie, at least because it was massive, because its main actor is Timothée Chalamet. And I have actually only ever seen Timothée Chalamet in one movie, and that is the Dune, or the first Dune movie. And it's crazy because I haven't watched the other one yet, or the TV series, even though literally the Dune saga is one of my favorite sagas of all time, with Frank Herbert being one of my favorite authors of all time. Literally, Children of Dune, the third book in the Dune saga, is my third favorite book of all time. But I just haven't got to watch the other movies yet. I will eventually, probably before the third one comes out, even though I know it's not the third part of the first Dune book. It's actually covering Dune Messiah predominantly. But yeah, so I just knew that Timothée Chalamet was in this movie, and that's not why I watched it. I watched it because it had much acclaim around it and all of that. So I wanted to give it a check. Wanted to give it a look. I want to give it a check out. But yeah, so I ultimately decided on doing that here for the last 2 days, and it deserves the acclaim that it's been getting. It is a great movie, and I'll just kind of go into the plot a little bit here. So it starts off with the most interesting way that I have ever seen a movie start off. So at first, we get introduced to our main character, Marty Mauser, who's working at a shoe store, and we see also that he is a ping pong player. He's trying to get money so they can go to the World Championship in Britain. And so we see ultimately as he kind of yammering it up with his boss, and his boss is like, "No, I'm gonna promote you to manager. You ain't gotta leave to go do that ping pong stuff." And I use that accent because they have very New Yorker accents, even though that was a horrible one. But yeah, so they see it then as Marty's trying to get this, and ultimately he ends up walking out relatively dissatisfied. And we also get to see as he kind of shows off his ping pong balls here, trying to promote a business that him and his not really friend, but acquaintance Dion, because he's really just using Dion, are trying to push. They are specifically orange ping pong balls, because Marty is making the claim that when you have white on white, well, hold on. Yeah, because we get to see Marty actually like go and play a little bit, and we then mention see as he's playing Wally, who's a character later on, that I don't know if it was Wally there. I can't remember exactly who it was that he played, but he played someone, and he was like, "I couldn't see the white ball because it was white on white." So then he's trying to push this idea to his boss so he can get some money and some funding, that it is better to use these orange balls that him and Dion have produced than use white on white. But he then kind of starts showing off like all of like the predominant ping pong players and all that, and showing how they have black shirts and all of that. And so he just kind of goes about this, and ultimately the boss is kind of like, I don't really want to go through with this. And then we see as Marty ends up leaving the office, finds this woman who we later learn to be called Rachel. It's Meisler. I was about to say Meisler. And he takes her to the back of the shoe stop. Not the shoe stop, but the shoe shop. And gets to go into town. And that's not the thing that made this, like the beginning of this movie, very unique. What made this very unique is we get a microscopic view of the antics going on here. We legit see as fertilization happens at the beginning of this movie. We see as the sperm and the egg meet to form a zygote. Microscopic version of what is partaking here. It left me speechless. I was just laughing. And then we essentially get the beginning of the movie. That's how the movie starts. So it kind of just puts us off on this crazy foot to begin with. But we do ultimately see as Marty ends up, Morris comes to us, he's like, you know what? I'm owed $700 by my boss. You know what I got to do? I got to go hold up Murphy, who's the other worker, and be like, yo, give me the money. So we see then as he goes to the office, and Murphy kind of like flinches and locks it up, locks the safe up real quick. And Marty's like, okay, bro. He offered to promote me to manager, and you deserve this more than me. So you can report me once I leave here, but you let me get my $700 and go. And Murphy ultimately does end up allowing him to do this. So we then see as Marty decides to head off to England or the British Isles for the World Championship, the Ping Pong World Championship. I believe it's 1952 this year. But yeah, so we see he heads off, and he kind of starts getting his accommodation set up and all that. He realizes, we got kind of poor accommodations on the first night. So we then see as he kind of starts, we actually play like the first round of ping pong and all that. He does well. He wins all of his matches. And we then see as he kind of watches another player by the name of Indo. He is from Japan. And we see he inquires a little bit. He's like, yo, how did he get over the travel ban? Because this is obviously only 7 years after the end of World War II. And American occupation is still very present. So they have the travel ban. But he was ultimately able to get through it because of how popular ping pong is and how popular it is becoming. And so we see as Indo is playing. Indo has a very unique style, and he plays very well, very high-level playing here. And so We then see as Marty ultimately ends up kind of speaking about, no, well, not speaking about that, but he's kind of goes and confronts the like main who's running this, like the head honcho that is running the world championship. He goes up here and he's like, yo, where are you staying? He's like, I'm staying in the Ritz. And Marty gets complaining about how he can't play optimally here if he doesn't have good sleeping. And ultimately, he ends up getting his own room in the suite, in the Ritz. It's like the Royal Suite or something like that. And he stays there. So we then see it one day at breakfast. He kind of sitting down, chopping it up with some people. And they get to mention about how they see this woman walk by. And they mention about how she's this famous actress. And talking about talking to her and all of that, or talking about her and all of that, and we see as Marty just dead eyes her this entire time, and we know what Marty's mind is set on. So we see later on as she is talking, like she's like in her room, and we see she gets a call, and it's from Marty, and Marty kind of starts getting to talking to her and all that, telling her to come to his match the next day and all that, obviously trying to seduce her. And so we see as she doesn't really fall for it at first. However, as the day progresses, as the time progresses, we see that as Marty goes and plays a match, and he ultimately ends up playing this dude by the name of Kletsky. And Kletsky is the current world champion. And Marty ends up beating him. And so we didn't see as it kind of progressed. And obviously, this woman, whose name is K-Stone, is very impressed by this. And ultimately, Marty ends up eventually getting his way. And let's say he partakes in the... what am I thinking here? Partakes in... I said the bountiful harvest. What word am I missing? The favors. There we are. The favor. He partakes in the favors of Miss Stone, and this becomes a motif. But yeah, so we see this happens, and then Marty ultimately ends up kind of talking with Kletsky a little bit later. We see as him and Kletsky are at a dinner, and they're just kind of yapping it up, chopping it up. I see as Kletsky kind of trying to convince Marty to join the Harlem Globetrotters with him as a ping pong duo, just kind of have some fun and do some showing off and like that. But Marty's like, no, I ain't being in this clown group. And we didn't see as he notices, yo, Kay's over there. So he ends up ordering dinner for the entire, when they were on the phone previously, she had explained to him who her husband was. His name is Roxwell, or his last name is at least Roxwell. I don't know if we ever actually hear his first name. We might when she's on the phone that first time, but I did not remember. I just remember Roxwell because he's the main antagonist of the story. And he makes pins, and that actually becomes important later on. But yeah, so we see then as Marty ends up offering to buy the dinner of all of them. So we then see the big man Roxwell is coming over here. He's like, yo, he doesn't know Marty's name, but he's like, why are you paying for my dinner? He's like, what do you want? And Marty's like, oh man, I don't want nothing. And they just kind of get to talking and all that, kind of yammering it up, while Marty is eyeballing Kay once more. And so we kind of see as this continues to play through. I think this actually happened before they got together. I might be mixing my events. I don't know why this little part is fuzzy here. Probably because it's only the first 30 minutes of the movie. But yeah, so see this, and ultimately he gets the yammer, and we get not really a goofy story. We hear Kletsky tell a story, and Kletsky was in a concentration camp. I believe he was in Auschwitz, he says, during the... obviously World War II, during the Holocaust and all of that. And he tells a story about how one time he was allowed out to defuse bombs because he was renowned worldwide for being the ping pong world champion. And when he did this, he saw one time that he found some bees, found the bees, rubbed honey all over himself, covered himself back up, went back to his dorm, and allowed all the people in there to lick the honey off of him for sustenance. But yeah, so we get that story. We also learned that Roxwell's son died on the Japanese front, or technically the Eastern Front of World War II, but Western as compared to the United States. But yeah, so we see then as this story gets told and all of that, and Roxwell and Marty already kind of started off on a bad foot. And so then we see as, like I said, time progresses, and we do eventually, because there is some intermediate stuff, like I said, that finagling that happened, and then just some kind of intermediary stuff. And we see as Marty ultimately ends up making it to the championship. And once he makes it to the championship, who else makes it to the championship? Endo from Japan. And we see as Endo ultimately ends up going against Marty, and they have a game, and Endo wins. Endo wins the championship and the title of ping pong world champ. And Marty kind of freaks out about this and all of that, and obviously he's defeated because he's going to go back home essentially a failure. And we see then he travels back home to the United States, and he is bound and determined that he is going to make it back to the World Championship. And we see as he actually, during this time, well, before actually he goes to the United States, he ends up actually joining the Globetrotters with Klitsky, and they go about doing things. We see as they stop at the pyramids at one point, he gets a piece off the pyramids for his mother, and they kind of go about doing everything. We obviously see, though, that Marty is not fulfilled from this. And so once he gets back home, obviously, he gives the piece to his mother, and just kind of things play through and all of that. And now, one of the first things that happen is he goes to his house, he's chilling in there, and police come in and arrest him. Now, this is his boss, and his boss obviously has a soft spot for him, and Marty ultimately doesn't apologize to all that, and they allow him to kind of go along his way, and they're going to go have a meal. Well, then Marty goes to his room to get changed, but then he ends up fleeing. And once he flees, he ends up running, ultimately evading the cops pretty well until he gets to this pet shop, essentially, that Rachel works at. And he goes in there, and he goes for the phone. And once Rachel notices him, she goes back into the phone as well. And she's like, yo, this is your kid that we just saw conceived on the big screen. But yeah. So he's like, no, it's not my kid. I always abandon shit. But yeah. So after that, we then see as her husband, whose name, I can't remember exactly what his name is. It starts with an E or an I, it's something like that. He comes in here, and he's like, yo, what were you doing with my wife? Because they were, like, consoling each other. And, or no, that's not innuendo. They were kind of just talking, and I think they were hugging or something like that. And so he comes in, he's like, yo, what are you doing with my wife? And then he kind of starts getting the memo and goes and tells the police, yo, Marty's in here. So we then see as Marty is ultimately able to escape, and he heads off to meet up with Wally. And I'll just let you know, Wally is played by Tyler, the Creator, and he did great here. Like, I don't know if Tyler's acted in any other movie, but, like, I loved his performance here. And it was just kind of goofy to see this dude who I've listened to, like, all of his music in a movie. It was just kind of odd. Like, I bet it was kind of like seeing Travis Scott in the new Odyssey movie, but I haven't watched it yet. But yeah, so, with this, like I said, we see as they get together, and well, not get together, but like they join forces, and they start, it's kind of building money to start living in this hotel a little bit. And we see as Marty's like dead set on getting a shower, and when he goes to get his shower, we see as he gets into the tub, and he's just kind of chilling in there, and we see as Wally is taking out through a bunch of mail, and he looks at it and he's like, yo, what's the Ritz? And Marty's like, it's like a hotel I stayed at. And he then gets telling Marty about how he has a bill for $1,600, and he's got to pay it off because he's been banned from going to the next World Championship because of this bill. And we then see as Marty's bathtub falls through the floor onto this dude's arm, whose name is Ezra, who we saw walk in prior when Wally and Marty were in the lobby area with a very pungent dog. Everyone was commenting on how bad it smelled. And he was bathing his dog in there, and his arm gets crushed, essentially, by the tub, and the dog's freaking out, but the dog is okay. We see then as he gets the dog out, and then Marty's obviously freaking out and all this stuff, and he just got hit with the fact that he's got to make some money or he's not going to be able to go to the World Championship in Tokyo this year. And so we kind of see as this plays about a little bit more. And I guess also this is a good point to mention that, okay, the events are all kind of blurry here because he does a lot of stuff to hustle for money here. But at one point we see as Roxwell ends up confronting him. He's like, yo, dude, I didn't know about ping pong before I came to your tournaments and noticed this. So what I want to do is I want to set up an exhibition match to sell pins in Japan. I want you to go under the Roxwell banner to Japan, play against Indo, and lose, so the Japanese will be promoted to buy my pins. And Marty's like, no, I'm not breaking my honor to do that, or my pride. And Roxwell's like, bro, we're playing for the Harlem Globetrotters. How much less pride can you have? And Marty then obviously insults him. He he makes a joke towards his son dying in the front in Japan. And this obviously does not go over well. So we then see as it progresses, like I said, back to the Ezra stuff. And we see as Marty is then, once he comes back into where Ezra has a crushed arm, Ezra's ultimately telling him, yo, if you take my dog to the vet for like the next couple of weeks or something like that, then I will give you copious amounts of money. It's like $150 a week or something like that. And so we see ultimately as Wally begrudgingly agrees to chauffeur Marty back and forth from the vet. And we see as they're doing this, but then they get another idea. Let's make some money gambling. So we see as they ultimately both end up going to this bowling alley, and they act like they don't know each other. And we see as Marty's kind of playing against this one guy in ping pong, acting being a real douchebag. And we see as he ultimately, well, the other dude has to end up going bowl with his girlfriend, and Marty ultimately ends up not begging, but like trying to fight for his money, not necessarily like pugilistic, but argue for his money. And we then see as another guy comes up, and this guy's Wally. However, they're acting like they don't know each other, and ultimately, Wally ends up getting beat by Marty, and he ends up taking a lot of his money, and Wally's like, man, just give me some, like, $5 for gas, and Marty will not do it. So we see then as this other guy's brought up, and they're like, yo, play on Wally's behalf so he can at least get some gas. And so we come up, and Marty's like, yo, bet $40. And this dude's like, I don't have $40 to bet. But then we see all the crowd starts kind of filling up his bet, and then Marty blows him out of the water. They take the money, and Marty and Wally leave far richer than they previously were. And we see as they're going home, they stop by this gas station. It's empty since it's nighttime. But they end up going in there, breaking in, and ultimately, like, getting it all arranged and everything. We see as they do end up getting the gas. And then as they're preparing to leave, we see as a band of hoodlums end up pulling up, and they are ready to beat the crap out of Wally and Marty because they figure out the little sham they were running. And so we see as all goes crazy. Marty sprays them with a gas can. They try and break in on Wally, but the dog ends up biting him since the dog was in there because they rode it to the vet. And they then see as Marty hops in. They all drive off. They knock down a power pole. This power pole then ignites the gas that's everywhere and blows up. The dog jumps at the car. It goes running. It almost gets blasted, but it just runs off. And this will become an integral point later on in the story. But yeah, so we see as all this happens, and it all kind of just goes to crap, and they have now lost Ezra's dog. And so this kind of just continues to play through. And we then see one day as, like I said, Marty is still trying to get some money. We see he does have a little bit of a revival with his interactions with Mrs. K. Stone. We see she's acting in New York. He comes in and kind of watches her show, gives the other actors some tips, very, I guess, insultingly almost. And we then see as they have another meetup. And during this meetup, they're in the shower doing their thing, and Marty notices she has a diamond necklace on. So you know what he's going to do? I'm going to rob her! So he ends up taking off her necklace, dropping it in the drain, and then he stays in the room afterwards, and he has like a talk with her about how he does everything on his own. He's making his own money and stuff like that. Then he calls in someone to, I can't remember what the term is, like draw the contents of the drain without. So they do this. He ends up getting the necklace, tries and sell it. It's a fake necklace. It's like $2. So we then see as, and we see the events with Rachel once more. And we see as Marty and Rachel end up getting, we see as Marty, I don't remember exactly where they were when this happened, but we ultimately ended up to the point where Rachel appears to have been abused by her husband because the child she's holding is not his. And so she comes to Marty, and Marty is very disgruntled by this. He ends up going to their house and warping the dude over the face with a trophy that he stole from his mom's house that was his. And so we kind of just see as all that kind of plays out. And then afterwards, we then see as Marty and Rachel decide, we're going to try and get this dog back, so I'm going to give it back to Ezra. And so they end up, I believe it was borrowing a car from Dion because they've been living at Dion's for a time. And so end up getting in the car, go try and find the dog. They're unable to find it. They end up going to this farmhouse where the dog supposedly is, get in there, try and get the dog, but the dude ends up pulling back up to his house, shooting the shotgun at him. Rachel hits him with the car, then Marty hops back in. They're unable to get the dog, and they have to leave. And so we see as all of this plays out. And once they get back, they're kind of freaking out a little bit because the car was damaged and everything. And so they're in a bit of trouble. And once they get back, we see as they are kind of talking and everything. And Dion is not supposed to have these people at his house, but he does anyway. They kind of get into a bit of argument. He's like, shh, my parents are here. But then once they get into the room a little bit, like they get a very frantic argument. The woman starts crying, and not the woman, but Rachel ends up revealing that the child within her is Marty's, and it just kind of starts going downhill. And we then see as at one point she is crying, and Marty goes to wipe the tears off her face, and the black eye she had was fake. It was not real, because she had faked it just to get Marty's attention. And Marty's like, why would you do that to me? And so we then see as Marty heads off. And the next big event with Marty is he ends up going to Kay again. He's like, I'm so sorry for stealing your necklace. I wanted to return it to you. I wanted to apologize. And she was like, what was all that about, like making your own money and stuff like that? And we see as they kind of just have this like discussion. She's obviously a little bit disgruntled from this. And we then see also with Rachel. Now, Rachel tries to go back to her husband's house, who didn't beat her, but is obviously not happy. We see he starts trashing the house, freaking out and all of that. And all like the older women come around the house and they're like, yo, Rachel, do you need help? And we then see as he ends up revealing to Marty's mom, who lives in the same complex, yo, happy grandson birth or grandchild birth. And we then see as Rachel kind of is obviously not enjoying this interaction. But yeah. So then after this, we had previously saw, well, I guess I'll actually follow Marty's story for the time, but we see as Marty ends up, once again, getting back in cahoots with K-Stone and is able to get an actual necklace this time. And they go to town in the middle of Central Park. And they end up getting caught by police. And ultimately, we see as the police are obviously disgruntled by this, they capture him, they recognize who Kay is because she's a famous actress. And ultimately, they are able to pay the police off with the necklace, and then they head back to the party that was being held in Kay's name for this new show that she was doing, the one she was acting for that Marty interrupted briefly, or at least the rehearsal. And so we see all this, and Kay tells Marty, yo, I'll get you another necklace begrudgingly because she has 25 of them for 25 years of marriage. So we see she goes and plans to do this, but she ultimately ends up getting caught up with something. It's not actually saying exactly what she got caught up with, but it's apparently tragic because she was crying and all that once Marty went upstairs and tried to get her attention. But he ends up coming back downstairs and finding Roxwell because he's her husband. And he goes and talks to him, and he's begging for this chance with the pin deal again. And Roxwell's like, no, I'm not going to do it. But ultimately, we'd seen Marty had once again, previous to this, had went and tried to meet up with Roxwell at the same cafe and get his attention to reignite this deal. However, we see that Roxwell's a little bit more agreeable to this. However, there will be consequences for Marty. Marty's got to get paddled. So we see as he bends Marty over a chair, gets a paddle, and spanks this dude like 8 times. Not 8 times, it was like 5 actually. But yeah, he does actually end up getting the deal after this. And so we then see as all of this plays out, and crap, what else was there? Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So we see this plays out. He then has the money to head to Japan, and he does so. Now, what we get to see next is Rachel. Rachel once more tries to get the money off Ezra's dog, and this ultimately does not end up going very well. But we do see, like I said, as it plays out and everything. Hold on, I think, when was this crap? I think it was, yes, it was before Ezra had to leave. No, it was before Marty had to leave. But yeah, we see she tries to go back against the dog, but ultimately she ends up getting captured by Ezra and his goons because he's a mobster. Since why am I forgetting the okay, yeah, this happened before he went to Japan. So before he ships off to Japan, we see as Rachel tries to go get the money again. She gets captured. Then Ezra comes and finds Marty, and he's like, yo, I got your girl, because Marty was downstairs practicing for some ping pong, or like in this like underground ping pong circuit that they have. And so we then see as he ends up taking Ezra and his goon to where the dog is, the dude with the shotgun and all that. And then we get this big bombastic shootout. Ultimately, all of the goons end up getting killed. Marty ends up getting some extra money off of Ezra, and it's really not that much. It had a bunch of nude pictures in it and the actual money, but there's not that much money. And we then see as they end up heading off. But while they head off, in fact, Rachel got shot in this confrontation. She only got shot in like the upper breast area, or like chest, pectoralis. And so there wasn't anything major she got shot with. We see she rushed to the hospital, and then Marty has to leave because he's got to go play ping pong. So we see as he's shipped off to Japan, where he goes and partakes in this exhibition match that's sanctioned by Roxwell. And so we see that he's going to have to lose this match. And he actually interacts with the World Championship ping pong dude once more. And ultimately, he's like, no, I'm not going to allow you to even be in the World Championship again, even if you pay off your bill at the Ritz. And he's like, dude, that's unfair. And he freaks out about it a little bit. And then we see as the exhibition match ends up going on. He plays Endo, and he loses to Endo. However, he ends up revealing the whole sham to everyone. He's like, I wasn't allowed to play at my full skill. Let me play at my full skill. I'll give you all a match that y'all all been wanting to see. And we then see as Endo agrees to it. And we see as they duke it out once more. and Marty wins. Marty is supreme over Endo. But yeah, so see this, he obviously falls out because he's just beat the world champion, but he's not going to get to play in the world championship. And he heads back home on an American plane because Roxwell was like, you're not getting back to the United States for my money. So he ends up heading off with the United States Army, gets back, see that Rachel is going to give birth. He ends up going in there, seeing Rachel for a brief bit, and she, like I said, she ends up giving birth. His child is born. We see as he ends up going to the nursery, breaking down as he sees his child, and now is prepared to settle down rather than living this rambunctious life, or presumably ready to settle down rather than living this rambunctious life that he's lived for the entire movie. But yeah, so that's all there was for Marty Supreme. Now, I really enjoyed this movie. I really loved Timothée Chalamet's work. I believe this will be a modern day classic. I believe people will look back on this movie and be like, "Ooh, that was a heck of a movie." Like, I mean, not necessarily like they do with The Godfather or something like that, but like, I don't know. Maybe like Forrest Gump. Like, that's the closest thing I can approximate to, probably because there's ping pong in both of them. But yeah. So, like, I think people will look back on this movie and be like, yeah, that's a classic. I believe it'll be a classic. I believe it's probably what Timothée Chalamet will be known for, at least one of his most known for works. Because like I said, I only watched Dune before this, and now I've watched this. I believe he did better in this than he did in Dune, personally. But he did great in both of them. Just, Marty Supreme was done very well. Like, Marty Supreme's character kind of reminds me of Samuel James Witwicky from the Transformers movies, like how erratic he is and quick speaking and everything. So I really loved his character, though he wasn't a good person. It was just a cool character. He was realistic. And I just loved his ambition toward getting what he wanted by any means necessary. Achieving his dreams by all costs. And I also loved like the suspense in the last game with Endo, or at least the first game with Endo, the last game with Endo. Because since he had lost, the assurance of going to the championship after speaking to the world championship dude, I felt like he was going to try and win the first game with Endo. However, he still didn't. He had honored his deal with Roxwell. However, that was too much for him. That was too humiliating. So he ultimately ended up going against Endo once more. I like that suspense, seeing and questioning what would happen. And it was overall a really fun movie. Like I said, there's a lot of goofy points in it. And I very much so enjoyed it. Like, I'd highly recommend going and watching it. It was a great movie. And it's got a lot of very good actors in it. So like I said, I would highly recommend that movie. It was great. I loved seeing Wally, who's Tyler, the creator, in it. He was a very cool character. I loved Ezra. Ezra was cool. And yeah, it's just a super, super good movie. I highly enjoyed it. And I'd recommend it to anyone. Well, I wouldn't recommend it to like my grandma because of even just the intro, but also because of all the immense promiscuity that's getting thrown around. But yeah, I guess if you're going to watch it, don't watch it with your parents or your grandma. So yeah, that's all it really is for Marty Supreme. And yeah, that's all it really is for episode 213 of Show For. Yeah, 213, I think. Yeah. So thank you very much for watching.